The silence of space around Outpost Theta was a heavy, permanent thing. Day, a Rilken administrator, felt the weight of it through the viewport of his small monitoring station. His long fingers, four-jointed and gray, tapped without rhythm on the console. The data streams were normal, boring. He missed the soft, wet forests of his homeworld. A sharp, dissonant alarm shattered the quiet. Day jolted, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly. A new signal painted itself on his screen, a civilian identag, Terran in origin. The Gwangju Star, a passenger liner. Its trajectory was erratic, tumbling slightly. A drive failure, the system suggested. Not critical, but problematic. The ship was drifting close to the edge of what the Kreth hegemony considered their patrol zone. Day's frilled neck tightened with unease. He opened a channel. Unidentified Terran vessel, this is Rilken Outpost Theta. You are approaching a navigation caution zone. Do you require assistance? A human voice, strained but calm, came back. Outpost Theta, this is Gwangju Star. We confirm drive instability. We are attempting stabilization. Stand by. Before Day could respond, a new, aggressive signature cut across the channel. A Kreth patrol vessel, angular and painted in harsh black and red, dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It moved with a predatory grace, positioning itself between the limping human ship and the open space. This is Warcaster Vlar of the Kreth hegemony. A voice, sharp as shattered crystal, announced. The Terran vessel has violated a restricted military zone. Its unstable drive core presents a hazard to navigation. Day's blood ran cold. The zone was disputed, not restricted. The Kreth were inventing a reason. He sent a frantic, encrypted pulse to his superiors on the Rilken homeworld. Situation escalating. Request guidance. On his visual feed, he saw the Gwangju Star's engines flicker. A final attempt to correct its course. It was moving away from the Kreth ship. Vlar's voice came again, absolute and final. The hazard is unacceptable. The debris field will serve as a sufficient warning to others. No. Day's whisper was a dry rasp in his empty station. He was too far away. His outpost had no weapons, only sensors and a single old salvage skiff. The Kreth ship fired. Not a warning shot. Not a disabling beam. A full-powered lance of molten energy that tore through the Gwangju Star's midsection. The human ship bloomed into a terrible, silent flower of light and shattered metal. Day watched, helpless, as the explosion ripped the vessel apart. His sensors automatically tracked the emergency beacons. 18 escape pods jettisoned into the freezing dark, tiny sparks of life against the expanding cloud of wreckage. The Kreth ship hung in the void for a moment. Then, with a cold efficiency that made Day sick, it began to move. It didn't head towards the pods for rescue. It began to systematically target and destroy them with precise, smaller bursts. One by one, the little sparks winked out. Day could not move. His people were peaceful, bureaucratic. Conflict was managed with words and trade agreements. This was not conflict. This was extermination. A civilian ship, 100 lives, being erased for a minor transgression that likely never happened. The last pod beacon vanished from his screen. The Kreth ship finished its grim work and, without another word, powered its engines and slipped back into faster-than-light travel. Gone. The silence returned, deeper and more terrible than before. Day stared at the sensor display, now showing only inert debris and the fading energy signatures of the weapon's fire. His duty was clear. Log the incident. File a report with the Galactic Accord. Send condolences to the Terrans. Do nothing to provoke the Kreth. But as his eyes scanned the debris field, a ghost of a signal flickered at the very edge of his range. It was weak and broken. Not a standard pod beacon, but a fragmented, automated distress call from a secondary system. A piece of wreckage with a sealed compartment? A pod with a damaged transmitter? His superior's response finally arrived, flashing on his screen. Observe and record. Do not intervene. Kreth action, while severe, is within their claimed jurisdictional parameters. Maintain neutrality. Day looked at the command. He looked at the flickering, dying signal on his screen. A life, possibly. One single life, blinking in the dark after everyone else had been erased. He thought of the Rilken principle of calculated compassion. Aid where it is logical, where the benefit outweighs the risk. This was not logical. This was pure, illogical risk. His gray hands moved over the console, not to log the event, but to activate the launch sequence for the salvage skiff. The small, boxy craft was unarmed and slow. It would take him an hour to reach the signal. He would be completely exposed. The bay doors opened, and Day guided the skiff out into the silent, deadly dark. He was violating direct orders. He was risking his career, his freedom, and his life, for a ghost of a signal, for a species he barely knew. He had no plan, only a feeling that was alien to his training. That watching every last light go out was a wrong he could not live with. The skiff moved through the graveyard of the Gwangju star. Twisted metal brushed against its hull. He followed the faint signal to a large, torn piece of the ship's hull, spinning slowly. Attached to it was an escape pod, its door sealed but its main engine and beacon shattered. It was pure chance it had been shielded by the wreckage. Day maneuvered the skiff, sealed a docking ring, and cut through the pod's manual override. The door hissed open. Inside, in the dim emergency light, was a human, a young female curled in a ball. She was clutching a broken data slate to her chest. She looked up as light flooded the pod. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and dried tears. Her eyes, wide with a terror so deep it was past screaming, met his. For a long moment. They just stared at each other. The gray, frilled Rilken with his large, dark eyes, and the terrified human girl. She flinched back, pressing herself against the wall. Day slowly raised his open hands, showing they were empty. He spoke softly, knowing his translator would activate. "I am not Kreth. I will not hurt you." The girl, Myri, just stared, shaking. She had seen her entire world destroyed, and now an alien was in her broken pod. Day's mission was no longer about a signal. It was about this one, shattered life, alone in the dark. He had to get her back to the outpost. He had to hide her, and he had no idea what would happen next. The air inside the salvage skiff was cold and smelled of metal and fear. Myri sat huddled in the co-pilot's chair, a thermal blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She did not look at Day. Her eyes were fixed on her own hands, which were clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. The only sound was the low hum of the skiff's engine and the occasional hiss of the life support system. Day guided the small craft carefully back toward Outpost Theta. His mind was racing. He had broken so many rules. He had an unauthorized, undocumented being on his skiff, a survivor of an incident his government had ordered him not to interfere with. Every protocol screamed at him to turn around, to eject the pod, to pretend he never saw the signal. He glanced at her. She was shivering. It was not from the cold. "My name is Day," he said softly, his translator box turning his clicks and sighs into flat, simple galactic standard. She did not respond for a long time. Then, a small, broken voice. "Myri, can you tell me what happened, Myri?" he asked. He needed the facts, even though he had seen them from afar. Her story came out in stops and starts. She was a data analyst. She was going to see her brother, Gene, who worked on another outpost. It was supposed to be a surprise. There was a loud bang from the engine room. The lights went out. The captain's voice told them to get to the pods. She remembered the scramble, the fear, the feeling of being launched into space. Then the blinding light as the ship exploded. Her pod was hit by something, spinning wildly. The comms broke. The beacon failed. She saw the other pods, one by one, being destroyed by bright red bolts of light. She hid in the darkness of her broken pod, waiting for the light to come for her too. "It never came," she whispered, "because I was broken. They thought I was already dead." Day felt a deep, uncomfortable shame. His people's neutrality had let this happen. His own inaction, until the last moment, had nearly let her die. "The ones who attacked you were the Kreth," he explained. "They are severe. They believe in showing strength through fear." "Why?" was all she could ask. "I do not know," Day answered honestly. It is their way. They docked in the outpost's small, private bay. Day led her through empty maintenance corridors, avoiding the main sectors where other Rilken might be working. The outpost was mostly automated, and his living sector was private. He brought her to a small storage room he sometimes used for meditation. It was quiet and warm. "You must stay here," he said. "You cannot be seen. If my government knows you are here, they will give you to the Kreth." The fear in her eyes sharpened into understanding. She nodded. Over the next few days, a strange routine settled in. Day brought her food packs and water. He found a portable screen she could use. He gave her a tool to help charge her damaged data slate, which she refused to let go of. It held pictures of her family, of her brother. She was quiet, often just staring at the wall. But slowly, she began to talk. She told him about Earth, about crowded cities and vast oceans. She told him about her brother Gene, who studied alien plants and was always getting into trouble for being too curious. She asked about his world, about the wet forests he missed. Day found himself speaking of things he rarely thought about. The sound of rain on broad leaves, the scent of the soil after a flood. He explained his people's logic, their love of order and predictable outcomes. Calculated compassion. Myri repeated one day, frowning at the concept. "You only help if it makes sense? It is the way to ensure the most good for the most people," Day said, though the words felt hollow now. Myri was silent for a moment, looking at her hands. "My brother once said something my grandmother told him. He saved a bird that flew into our window. I said it was just a bird." She looked up at Day, her eyes clear for the first time. He said, "Someone who saves a life is responsible for it. That's the debt. But Myri, we are also responsible for the one who saved it." Day tilted his head, his frills flexing in confusion. "I do not understand. The debt is to the life saved. It ends there. For you, maybe," Myri said. She hugged her knees to her chest. "But not for us. You saved me. You are in danger because of it. That makes you our responsibility now. My people, we do not forget that. My brother won't. Earth won't." Day felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. He had acted on a feeling, a single impulse against all logic. He thought he was saving one life. This human child was telling him he had tied his fate to an entire planet's strange sense of honor. It was an illogical, terrifying, and immensely heavy idea that he pushed it aside. She was in shock. She was clinging to hope. Her words were just words. A warning chime echoed softly from the console on his wrist. It was a priority alert from the outpost's main sensor array. He excused himself and went to his monitoring station. On the screen, he saw the reason for the alert. A Kreth diplomatic vessel, smaller than a warship but armed, had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. It was heading toward Outpost Theta. A formal, encrypted message was already incoming for the Rilken authorities. Day's blood turned to ice. They knew. Somehow, the Kreth knew he had taken something from the debris field. They were coming to check. He hurried back to the storage room. Myri saw his face and stood up, the blanket falling from her shoulders. "What's wrong?" "They are coming," Day said, his voice tight. "The Kreth. You must stay silent. Do not make a sound, no matter what you hear." Her face paled, but she set her jaw and nodded. She moved to the far corner of the room, behind a stack of supply crates, making herself as small as possible. Day sealed the door and walked back to the main hub to receive his guests, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He had followed an illogical feeling. Now logic was coming to collect its price. Day stood in the main receiving airlock of Outpost Theta, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. He tried to appear calm, like a proper Rilken administrator following procedure. Inside, his stomach was a knot of cold dread. The heavy doors hissed open with a blast of sterile air. 2 Kreth warriors entered first. They were tall, with tough, segmented skin the color of stone. Their eyes were dark and unblinking. They held polished rifles not quite pointed at him, but not pointed away either. Behind them walked Warcaster Vlar. She moved with a sharp, confident grace. Her uniform was a severe black, trimmed with red that matched the red of her eyes. She looked around the simple, rounded corridors of the outpost as if she found them dirty. "Administrator Day," she said. Her translator made her voice sound like grinding ice. "Your government has been informed of our visit. You will comply." Day gave a shallow bow of his head. "Outpost Theta is under Rilken authority. State your purpose, Warcaster."
Velarestin maut taitend.
Our scans of the debris field showed a minor anomaly, a power signature inconsistent with total destruction. It suggests a piece of wreckage was removed. Your outpost skiff bay shows recent, unauthorized activity. She took a step closer. "Did you enter the debris field?" The direct question hung in the air. Lying would be impossible. The skiff's logs were basic, but they existed. "I performed a standard sweep for navigational hazards," Day said, choosing his words with care. "A sweep," Vlar repeated, her tone dripping with disbelief. "And what did this sweep find?" "Fragments. Wreckage. Nothing of note," Day said, forcing his voice to stay level. "We have a different reading," Vlar snapped. "We believe a survival pod was recovered.
Ateren pot.
The property of the Kreth hegemony, as it was part of a destroyed vessel in our zone of control." She leaned in. "You will surrender it. Now." Day's frills pressed flat against his neck in fear. "There is no pod. Your scans are in error. I found no survivors." For a long moment Vlar just stared at him. Then she motioned to one of her warriors. The Kreth tapped a device on its wrist. A holographic message flickered to life in the middle of the room. It was from the Rilken High Council. The symbol of Day's own government glowed in the air. The voice of a senior minister, smooth and apologetic, filled the space. "Administrator Day, the Kreth hegemony has presented compelling data. You are ordered to fully cooperate with Warcaster Vlar's investigation. Provide access to all areas of the outpost. The Accord values stability above all. Do not provoke our Kreth neighbors. Compliance is mandatory." The message ended. The hologram vanished. Day felt all the strength leave his body. He had been abandoned. His act of compassion was now an incident. He was alone. "Now," Vlar said, the word final. "The pod." There was no choice. Resistance was pointless. He led them silently through the corridors toward the small, private docking bay. With each step, he saw Myri's face, her words about debt and responsibility. He had failed. The bay doors opened. The old salvage skiff sat there. The Kreth warriors moved quickly, scanning it. One of them pointed to the docking ring. "Recent seal engagement. Organic residue. Human." Vlar turned her red eyes on Day. "Where is it?" Day said nothing. He just looked at the floor. "Search the outpost," Vlar commanded. "Every sector. Use lifeform scanners." The Kreth split up. Day stood, a prisoner in his own station, as the sounds of doors being forced open and equipment being shoved aside echoed down the halls. He prayed to any listening star that Myri had stayed hidden, that the storage room's shielding would be enough. It was not. A call came over the Kreth comms. "Warcaster found a sealed compartment in the residential sector. Strong human biosignature." Vlar's look was one of pure, cold victory. She gestured with her head for Day to follow. They marched to the storage room. The door had been cut open with a plasma torch. The air smelled of burnt metal. Inside, two Kreth warriors stood over Myri. She was on her feet, back against the wall, holding her broken data slate like a shield. Her face was white with terror, but her eyes were defiant. "There is your debris," Vlar said to Day. Then she looked at Myri. "A piece of trash that should have been collected." One of the warriors stepped forward and grabbed Myri's arm. She cried out, a short, sharp sound of pain, and dropped the data slate, clattered on the floor. The warrior pulled her roughly toward the door. "Wait," Day said, the word bursting out of him. Vlar turned. "You have something to say, Administrator?" Day looked from Vlar's cruel face to Myri's pleading eyes. He thought of all the rules, all the logic. It all meant nothing now. "She is a civilian. She did nothing. You cannot just take her. We can, Vlar said simply. And we are. Your government has granted permission. You hid a prize of war. You are lucky we do not take you as well. She nodded to the warrior. Take the human to our ship. As Myri was dragged past Day, she struggled. She twisted her head to look right at him. Her voice was clear, loud, and full of a desperate hope she should not have possessed. They know, she shouted. My brother knows I was alive. I sent a message from your system. They will come. Do you hear me? They will come for me. The warrior shook her, and she fell silent. Stumbling as she was pulled away, Vlar paused in front of Day. A meaningless threat from a dead thing, she said softly. Then she followed her warriors, leaving Day alone in the ruined doorway. He stood there, listening to their footsteps fade. He looked down at the floor. Myri's broken data slate lay there, the screen cracked. He slowly bent and picked it up. The screen flickered for a second, showing a frozen image. A smiling human family, a younger Myri, a young man who must be Jean, all in front of a blue ocean. Then the screen went dark forever. Day sank to his knees. The silence of the outpost returned, but it was different now. It was not empty. It was filled with the ghost of a girl's last words, and the crushing weight of his own failure. He had saved her, only to hand her to her destroyers. He was responsible, and he was utterly, completely alone. A new alert chimed on the console down the hall. The official Rilken order directly for him. It was brief. Administrator Day, you are relieved of duty. For violating neutrality and endangering relations with the Kreth hegemony, you are to be placed under arrest. A transport is coming. Do not resist. He did not move. He just knelt on the cold floor, holding the broken slate, waiting for the next set of doors to open, for the next people to come and take him away. The Kreth had won. Logic had won. Compassion had died in the dark, and he was next. Time lost its meaning in the detention cell. It was a small, rounded room with a single hard bench and a dim light that never changed. Day sat on the bench, his back against the wall. He stared at the smooth, blank door. They had taken his console, his tools, everything. They had left him with only his thoughts, which were the worst company of all. He replayed everything in his mind. The signal on the screen. The decision to go. Myri's terrified face in the pod. Her quiet voice in the storage room. Her final, shouted promise as they dragged her away. They will come. The words echoed, but they felt empty now. A child's hope. The Kreth ship had left hours ago, heading back to their territory with its prisoner. No one was coming. The door hissed open. A Rilken guard stood there, holding a small tray with a food pack and water. He was young, his frills dull with discomfort. He did not meet Day's eyes. He placed the tray on the floor just inside the door. Wait, Day said, his voice rough from disuse. The guard paused, looking nervous. The human? Day asked. The Kreth ship. Has there been any message? The guard shook his head quickly.
No.
Nothing. The incident is closed. The Accord has logged it. He looked like he wanted to say more, but then he stepped back. The door hissed shut again, locking with a heavy, final sound. Closed. The incident was closed. Day put his head in his hands. Closed meant Myri was gone, probably already dead. Closed meant he had thrown away his life for nothing. The weight of it was a physical pain in his chest that he did not touch the food. More time passed. He heard the faint sounds of the outpost operating normally around him. Life went on. His arrest was just a minor administrative adjustment. He wondered when the transport would come to take him home for trial. He would be stripped of his position. He would live in shame. He kept thinking of Myri's words about debt and responsibility. They seemed like a cruel joke from a naive species that did not understand how the galaxy worked. Suddenly, a different sound cut through the silence. It was not the hum of the outpost. It was a deep, thrumming vibration that came through the very walls. It grew louder, shaking the floor beneath him. Day stood up. That was not a Rilken transport. That was the sound of a much larger ship, a powerful one, docking directly with the outpost. a ship with engines that growled. Alarms began to blare, short, sharp, urgent pulses he had never heard before. The outpost's calm computer voice spoke over the speakers. Security alert. Unauthorized docking in progress. Security alert. Boots pounded in the corridor outside his cell. He heard raised Rilken voices, confused and frightened. Then a new sound. A loud, percussive boom that made the door of his cell shudder. Once, twice. On the third impact, the door blew inward, tearing from its frame in a cloud of smoke and sparks. Day stumbled back, raising his arms against the sudden light and noise. Figures moved through the smoke. They were not Rilken. They were not Kreth. They were bulkier, clad in dark gray armor that covered their entire bodies. Visored helmets hid their faces. They moved quickly, with a purpose that was both calm and deadly. Humans. One of them stood in the doorway, a heavy rifle pointed down the corridor. Another stepped into the cell, scanning it with a swift turn of its head. The armored figure looked at Day. A voice came from a speaker on the helmet. It was a woman's voice, clear and calm. "Are you the Rilken designated Day?" Day could only nod, his frills pressed tight in shock. The human soldier raised a gauntlet hand and tapped the side of her helmet. "Package located. Cell is secure." She looked back at Day. "Come with us. Now." What is happening?" Day managed to ask. "No time," the soldier said. She stepped forward, not to grab him, but to motion him toward the door. "Stay close to me. Do exactly as I say." Day moved, his legs feeling weak. He stepped over the ruined door into the corridor. It was chaos. 2 other human soldiers were there, covering the hall. A Rilken security officer lay on the floor, stunned but not bleeding, his weapon knocked away. The humans were not killing, but they were not being gentle either. "Move," his escort said. They moved down the corridor at a fast jog. The human soldier in front led the way, pausing at intersections. The one behind Day watched the rear. They moved like a single machine. They reached a main hub. Several Rilken administrators and techs were on their knees, hands on their heads, guarded by another human. The viewport showed what was happening outside. A Terran warship was docked with Outpost Theta. It was not sleek like a Kreth ship. It was solid, angular, and painted a dull gray. It looked like a hammer. Its weapons ports were open and glowing. It held the entire outpost in its grip. Day's escort pushed him toward the main airlock, which was now connected to the human ship. As they passed the kneeling Rilken, Day saw the face of the senior administrator who had sent the order to comply with the Kreth. The Rilken's eyes were wide with a terror Day understood completely. Then they were in the airlock, and then they were crossing into the human ship. The air was different. It smelled of oil, clean metal, and something else. A kind of quiet tension. They entered a large room with consoles and screens, the ship's bridge. The armored soldier who had led him there finally took off her helmet. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and black hair tied back tightly. She looked at Day not with anger, but with a fierce intensity. "I am Communications Officer Sujin," she said. Then she turned. "Captain, we have him." A man turned from the main viewport. He wore a simpler uniform, but his posture was one of absolute command. His face was stern, lined with experience. This was Captain Taysan. He looked Day up and down. There was no warmth in his gaze, but there was no cruelty either. It was the look of a man assessing a mission objective. "Day of the Rilken," the captain said. His voice was low and steady. "Where is my citizen, Myri?" Day's frills trembled. "The Kreth. They took her. They came and they took her. Your government gave them permission. I tried. I could not." He expected anger. A shout. A threat. Captain Taysan just stared at him for a long, hard second. Then he gave a single, slow nod. "We know." He turned to a console. "Sergeant Kwan. Status on the outpost sweep?" A gruff male voice came over the speaker. "Outpost is secure, Captain. No other human life signs detected. Just a lot of very nervous snails." "Mind your words, Sergeant," Taysan said, but there was no real heat in it. He looked back at Day. "You hid her. You tried to protect her. Then you were arrested for it." It was not a question. Day nodded again, helplessly. Captain Tayson's jaw tightened. He looked at Sujin. Send the confirmation burst to Fleet Command. Asset Day is recovered. Primary asset Myri is confirmed in Kreth custody. Then send the second message. The one for them. Yes, sir, Sujin said, turning to her console, her fingers moving fast. Taysan stepped closer to Day. The captain's eyes were like stone. You saved one of ours. You suffered for it. That changes everything. He pointed to the main screen which showed the stars. Your part in this is over. Ours is just beginning. Now you will see how we pay our debts. Day stood on the bridge of the human warship, surrounded by strangers who had blown a hole in his world to get to him. He did not understand what was happening. But for the first time since the Kreth ship had arrived, the crushing weight of being alone was gone. It was replaced by something new, something cold and terrifying and immense. He had thought no one was coming. He was wrong. The human ship, the Jiangju, was quiet. It hummed with power, a deep vibration that Day could feel in his bones. He was in a small room near the bridge. It was not a cell. It had a cot and a chair. The door was open. An armored marine stood guard outside, but he did not point his weapon. He just watched the corridor. Day sat on the cot, still holding Myri's broken data slate. The humans had let him keep it. He was too confused to think. They had not hurt him. They had not questioned him. They had taken him from his own people with brutal force, and then they had given him water and left him alone. Captain Taysan appeared in the doorway. He held a small, flat device. Come with me, he said. His tone allowed no argument. Day stood and followed him back onto the bridge. The crew worked at their stations, speaking in low, quick voices. On the main view screen, Day saw the familiar shape of Outpost Theta, growing smaller as the Jiangju pulled away. His home for many cycles was now just a silent, gray disk against the black. Taysan led him to a console where Sujin sat. The communications officer glanced at Day, her expression unreadable. It is ready, Captain, she said. Play it for him, Taysan ordered. Sujin tapped the console. A recording began. It was not from the bridge. It was a formal broadcast, sent on all channels. Day recognized the seal that appeared first, the blue and white circle of the Terran Assembly. Earth's government. A human man in a dark uniform appeared. His face was grave. He spoke in clear, slow galactic standard. To the individual designated Day of the Rilken people. Day flinched. His image appeared next to the speaker. It was his official Rilken identification photo. You entered a designated hazard zone at great personal risk. You recovered a survivor from the wreckage of the Terran vessel Guangzhou Star. You provided sanctuary and medical aid. You protected our citizen from discovery. You were then arrested and punished for this act of compassion. The screen split. Now Myri's face was there too. Her smiling photo from her identification file. Day's frills went stiff. They knew her name. They knew everything. The speaker's voice grew harder, colder. To the governments of the Rilken Concord and the Kreth hegemony. You conspired in the destruction of a civilian vessel. You hunted its survivors. You then persecuted and imprisoned the one being who showed mercy. You took a child of Earth from her protector and delivered her to her enemies. The image changed again. It showed security footage, grainy and from a high angle. Day watched, horrified, as he saw himself standing in the outpost corridor. He saw the Kreth warriors. He saw Myri being dragged past him, heard her shouted words, "They will come!" The humans had gotten the outpost's own security logs. The speaker's face returned, filling the screen. His eyes were like ice. Therefore, by the unanimous will of the Terran Assembly, the following decree is issued. He paused. The silence on the recording felt heavier than the silence of space. As of this moment, the Terran Assembly is in a state of total war with the governments of the Rilken Concord and the Kreth hegemony. Day felt the floor tilt under him. He grabbed the edge of the console to stay upright. Va! Total war. For him? For one Rilken? It was madness. It was impossible. The speaker continued, each word a hammer blow. Our terms are non-negotiable. You will immediately release the Rilken citizen Day into Terran custody. You will immediately release the Terran citizen Myri Kim and any other survivors. You will surrender the Kreth Warcaster Vlar and all involved in the attack on the Gwangju Star to Terran justice. Another pause. The man leaned slightly forward, as if looking directly at every being who would hear this. There will be no conferences. There will be no diplomacy. There will be no discussion. The only communication we will accept is your unconditional compliance. If you do not comply, we will dismantle your governments until you do. This is the price of harming those under our protection. This is the cost of making an enemy of mercy. The screen went black. The message was over. The bridge of the Jiangju was utterly silent. Day could not breathe. He looked at Captain Tae-san, his mind screaming with disbelief. You cannot. It is a trick. A threat to make them negotiate. Tae-san shook his head slowly. It is not a trick. It is a fact. The message has been sent. The fleets are moving. But it is war, Day whispered, the word itself feeling too large to say. Over one person? Over me? It is not logical. The cost, the lives, it is too much. For the first time, he saw a flicker of something other than stone on Tae-san's face. It might have been pity, or understanding. You are thinking like a Rilken, Tae-san said, his voice low. We are not Rilken. You saved one of ours. You were broken for it. That is all we need to know. To us, that is the only logic that matters. Sujin spoke from her console, her voice calm but firm. Response incoming from the Rilken Concord. Text only. On screen, Tae-san said. Words appeared. They were from the Rilken High Council. They were frantic, confused. Terran Assembly. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding. The incident was regrettable, but we acted to preserve stability. We will release Day, of course. We had no knowledge the human was alive. We implore you. Recall your declaration. Let us talk. Tae-san looked at the message for a moment. Then he said, Sergeant Kwan, is Outpost Theta cleared? The gruff voice came back. All our teams are back on board, Captain. Good, Tae-san said. He turned to the weapons officer. Target the outpost's main power core and command hub. Non-essential systems only. Let's make sure they understand we are not talking. Aye, Captain, the officer said. No, Day cried out, stepping forward. Those are my people. They are not warriors. They just followed orders. Tae-san looked at him. So did the people who arrested you. So did the people who took Myri. Orders are not an excuse. He nodded. Fire. The Jiangju shuddered slightly. Two thin, bright lances of energy shot from its hull. They crossed the space between the ship and the outpost in a flash. There were no explosions. Instead, the lights on Outpost Theta flickered and died. A cloud of vapor erupted from one side, atmosphere venting from a controlled, precise strike. The outpost was not destroyed. It was crippled. A lesson. The Rilken message on the screen changed. Now it was just one line, repeated over and over. We comply. We comply. We comply. Tae-san ignored it. Set course for the Kreth border rally point, he commanded. He finally turned back to Day, who was shaking, staring at the darkened outpost on the view screen. They have learned their part of the lesson, the captain said. Now the Kreth will learn theirs. You are safe, Day. Your debt to Myri is paid. He placed a hand on Day's shoulder. The gesture was not gentle, but it was firm. Now watch. Hers to you is just beginning. Day watched the stars streak by on the main view screen. The Jiangju was moving at a speed that made his senses reel. He stood at the back of the bridge, a silent observer. No one paid him much attention now. They were focused on the task ahead. The war machine was in motion, and he was a single, small piece that had somehow set it all off. Captain Tae-san stood in the center of it all, a rock of calm. Status, he said, his voice cutting through the low hum of the bridge. Kreth border outposts are going to high alert, Sujin reported from her console. They are scanning heavily. They see us coming. Let them see, Taysan said. Sergeant Quan, prepare the drop teams. We go in fast and hard. Our only objective is the recovery of Myri Kim. Secondary objective is the capture of Kreth command personnel, specifically Warcaster Vlar. Do not engage in extended combat. We are a scalpel, not a hammer. A scalpel with a big kick, sir. The gruff voice of Sergeant Quan replied over the comms. Teams are ready. We'll find your girl. Day found his voice, small and strained. You are going to board a Kreth ship? They will destroy you the moment you get close. Taysan glanced at him. They will try. An alarm pinged softly. Captain, the sensor officer called out. 2 Kreth interceptors have broken orbit from the nearest border fortress. They are on an intercept course. Weapons hot. Time to intercept. Taysan asked, his hands clasped behind his back. For minutes. Bring us to battle stations. Quietly, Taysan said. Lights on the bridge dimmed to a deep red. The crew's movements became even more focused, but no one raised their voice. Day had expected shouting, panic. There was only a terrible, efficient quiet. The Kreth ships appeared on the screen as angry red dots. They were fast and sleek like knives. They opened fire while still at long range. Bolts of red plasma streaked toward the Jiangju. Evasive pattern delta, Taysan said. The Jiangju moved, not with the quick darting of the Kreth ships, but with a heavy, powerful roll that made the deck tilt under Day's feet. The plasma bolts missed, passing by into the dark. Return fire. Target their engines only, Taysan ordered. The Jiangju's weapons fired. They were not the bright red of the Kreth. They were a blinding solid white. The beams lanced out with pinpoint accuracy. They struck the lead Kreth interceptor at the rear. There was a flash of light and a spray of molten metal. The ship spun wildly, its engines dark. It was not destroyed. It was crippled just like Outpost Theta. The second interceptor veered away, trying to get behind the human ship. The Jiangju rotated, presenting its broadside. Another white beam shot out. It sheared off one of the Kreth ship's weapon arrays. The interceptor broke off its attack, limping back toward the fortress. The entire fight had taken less than a minute. The bridge was still quiet. Kreth Fortress is launching more ships, Sujin said. But they are holding position. They are confused, sir. They expected a brawl, Taysan said, a hint of cold satisfaction in his voice. They got a warning. Hold course for the designated coordinates. The Kreth prison barge is there. Their scans confirm 1 human life sign aboard. The Jiangju sped forward, now ignoring the fortress. The Kreth ships did not pursue. They clustered defensively around their base. The human ship was a predator they did not understand, and it had just shown it could take their fangs with surgical precision. Minutes later, a larger, uglier ship appeared on the screen. It was a Kreth detention vessel, a blocky, armored scow. Target its main engines and communications array, Taysan said. Prepare for boarding. Sergeant Quan, go. Again, the white beams flashed. They hit the barge's engines, and a shower of sparks erupted into space. His comms dish crumpled. It was now a blind, floating box. Small pods shot away from the Jiangju, streaking toward the crippled barge. Day watched, his heart pounding. He saw tiny figures in gray armor, the humans, use jets to land on the barge's hull. They placed charges on a hatch. A flash of light, silent in the vacuum, and they were inside. The wait was the longest of Day's life. He stared at the silent barge on the screen, imagining the fighting inside. He thought of Myri in the dark, cold hands of the Kreth. He thought of the Marine, Sujin, telling him to watch how they paid their debts. Captain, we have her. Sergeant Quan's voice was loud over the comm, sharp with relief. I say again, we have Myri Kim. She is alive. She is weak but alive. We also have the Kreth Warcaster. She put up a fight. A weight Day had not known he was carrying lifted from his chest. He sagged against a console. Get them back to the ship, Taysan ordered, his own shoulders relaxing just a fraction. All teams pull out. Prep for immediate jump to faster than light. Soon, the boarding pods returned. Day watched the main airlock indicator on the bridge. Cycled. The inner door opened. Sergeant Kwan entered first, his helmet off. His face was smudged with dirt, and he had a cut over one eye. Behind him, 2 medics carried a stretcher. On it lay Myri. She was wrapped in a thermal blanket. She was so pale. She looked smaller than Day remembered. Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing. Then her eyes fluttered open. They swept across the unfamiliar bridge, confused and scared. They found Captain Tae-san, then Sergeant Kwan. And then they landed on Day. A change came over her face. The fear did not vanish, but it was pushed aside by a wave of pure, stunned recognition. Her cracked lips moved. Day? She whispered, the sound almost lost in the hum of the bridge. He took a step toward her, then stopped, unsure. She tried to sit up, a weak movement. One of her hands slipped from under the blanket and reached out, just a little, toward him. The Marines and medics stopped. Everyone on the bridge seemed to hold their breath. They all watched the girl on the stretcher and the alien she was reaching for. Day moved then. He went to her side. He looked down at her small, human hand. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with his own long, gray fingers. He did not take her hand. He simply let his fingertips rest gently against the back of her palm, the barest point of contact between 2 worlds. Tears welled in Myri's eyes, but she did not cry. She gave his fingers the tiniest, weakest press. You came. She breathed. No, Day said softly, his frills trembling with an emotion he had no name for. He looked at the humans around him, the fierce sergeant, the stern captain, the intense communications officer. He looked back at her. They came. Myri closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a clean line through the dirt on her cheek. She smiled. It was a small, broken, triumphant thing. I told you, she whispered, before exhaustion pulled her back into sleep. Day stood there, his fingers still touching her hand, as the Jeongju turned away from the broken Kreth ships and jumped into the star-streaked night. The Jeongju was a different ship on the return journey. The quiet tension was gone, replaced by a low hum of relief. Myri was in the medical bay, sleeping under the watchful eyes of the ship's doctor. She was bruised and malnourished, but she would recover. Day stood once more on the bridge. He felt like a ghost, present but not part of the machinery around him. On the main view screen, a live broadcast from the Galactic Accord news service played silently. The symbols of the Rilken Concord and the Kreth hegemony were displayed, with the Terran seal between them like a wall. Captain Tae-san stood beside him, arms crossed. They are talking now, he said, nodding at the screen. Because we made them listen. Sujin turned from her console. Incoming broadcast from the Terran Assembly, Captain. For all channels. Put it on speaker, Tae-san said. The familiar, stern face of the Terran spokesman appeared. His expression was as hard as before. People of the Galactic Accord. 2 solar days ago, the Terran Assembly declared a state of war. Our reasons were stated plainly. An act of mercy was punished. A child was taken. The Kreth hegemony believed strength was shown through cruelty. The Rilken Concord believed peace was kept through obedience. Both were wrong. The screen split. On one side was a still image of Day, from his Rilken file. On the other was a live feed from the Jeongju's medical bay. It showed Myri, awake now, propped up on a pillow. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. A blanket was wrapped around her shoulders. The Rilken citizen, Day, is under our protection, the spokesman continued. The Terran citizen, Myri Kim, has been recovered. The Kreth warcaster Vlar is in our custody. Therefore, our primary war aims have been achieved. He paused, letting the words sink in across 1,000 worlds. The state of war between the Terran Assembly and the Rilken Concord is now ended. Your compliance was noted. Let it be noted that our mercy, once offered, is also complete. Do not test it again. The image of the Rilken symbol faded from the screen. However, the spokesman's voice turned to ice. The Kreth hegemony's actions began this cycle of violence. Their doctrine of fear is a poison, until they renounce it and surrender all individuals responsible for the Gwangju Star atrocity. The state of war between our peoples continues. Our fleets remain at their borders. Any Kreth military vessel that powers its weapons will be destroyed. Any Kreth world that harbors the guilty will be isolated. We will dismantle your ability to harm the innocent piece by piece until you understand the only strength that matters, the strength to protect. The broadcast ended. The screen returned to the starfield. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Taysan let out a long, slow breath. It is done. For us, at least. Day looked from the captain to the stars. You stopped a war for one person, and you continue a war for a principle. It is not logical. It is to us, said a new voice, weak but firm. They turned. Myri stood at the entrance to the bridge, leaning on the arm of a medic. She was still pale, but she was on her feet. Her eyes were on Day. The logic is simple, she said, taking a slow step forward. The medic let her go but stayed close. If someone is good, you be good to them. If someone is cruel, you stop them. If you make a promise, you keep it. You kept your promise to save me. We kept our promise to save you. She stopped in front of him. The galaxy thinks we are crazy. Maybe we are. But now everyone knows. If you save a human, you gain the most loyal friend in the stars. If you hurt one who was saved, you make the worst enemy you can imagine. That is our logic. Day looked at her, this fragile, resilient young woman who had lost everything and yet still believed in promises. He thought of his own people who followed orders out of fear. He thought of the Kreth who ruled through fear. These humans were ruled by something else, something that seemed to them as obvious as gravity. Captain Taysan approached. We will be arriving at a neutral station soon. You will both be transferred to a Terran diplomatic ship. Myri, you will go home to Earth. Day! He hesitated. The offer of our protection is permanent. You can come to Earth. You will have a home there for as long as you wish. Or, if you choose, we will return you to Rilken space. Day felt the eyes of the bridge crew on him. He thought of his quiet life on the outpost, the rules, the silence. He thought of the cell and the sound of the door breaking in. He looked at Myri's expectant face. I do not think I can go back, he said quietly. My home was a set of rules. It was not a promise. He bowed his head to Taysan. I would see this Earth. Myri smiled, a real smile this time, bright and warm. Later, Day stood by a viewport watching the stars. The war with the Kreth was not his war, but he understood now that it was a message, being written across the stars in fire and steel. A message that some lines could not be crossed. Sujin came to stand beside him. She handed him a new data slate. It's blank, she said, for you to start new logs. Better ones. He took it. Thank you. You are one of ours now, she said simply, as if stating the weather. It is what we do. The Jiangju moved on through the quiet dark. Behind it, the Kreth Empire was learning a new and terrible lesson. Ahead, a world of oceans and promises waited. And in the heart of the galaxy, a new story was being told. It was a warning and a welcome all in one. It asked a simple question that would now echo in the halls of every government, on every ship, in every heart that knew fear. Did you save a human? And the stars themselves seemed to whisper the answer, carried on the wake of a single purposeful ship. Then Earth will move the heavens for you.